So in this video I will talk about responses to selection criteria as part of your job application process. So first I will define selection criteria, explain what they are and why they are important, and then I will break down the whole process of responding to selection criteria into several steps. So I will explain how to prepare for this process and then how to actually respond to specific selection criteria. And in the second part of the video I will share and I will show you specific responses to selection criteria that I wrote in the past as part of my applications for research assistant jobs, and these were all successful applications. So the responses I will show you all directly led to a job interview, so I think it's quite important. So there's evidence that they were well written and they were effective and successful. Importantly, although the examples that I will be showing you, as I said, are specifically for a research assistant job, I believe that what I tell you, what I show you in this video is pretty universal and can be applied to any other jobs, so definitely to academic jobs or teaching jobs, but I would also argue that they can be applied to any other job. So whenever you are required to address selection criteria in your job application process, hopefully you will find this video useful. So firstly, what are selection criteria? Selection criteria are carefully worded statements that aim to explore your background, your knowledge, and your experience. And you will know when you see them, because if in fact responding to selection criteria is a part of your application, this is exactly how they are described. So you don't have to guess anything. Usually this application will tell you that they expect you to respond to the following selection criteria. And quite often there are two types of selection criteria, namely essential criteria and desirable criteria. So of course, as the name suggests, essential criteria are the ones that you absolutely have to meet, and desirable are the ones that ideally you would meet too. So now I want to break down the whole process of preparing for and addressing the selection criteria. So you're applying for a job and you know that you have to address certain selection criteria. So this process will be broken down into three steps. So the first one is simply to decide whether you are a good fit for the job, and therefore whether it's worth even trying to respond to these selection criteria. The second step is to prepare for writing these responses, and as I will explain, it's a very important step, because eventually you will be applying for possibly many different jobs. So it's good to have this structure in place, because of course, as you will see, it takes a lot of time to write these responses, but after a while you'll have this framework and you'll have this template that you'll be just slightly adjusting and customizing for individual jobs. So either way, it's very important to prepare properly. And then the third step, of course, is to write the responses to selection criteria, and this is where I will also break down the process of responding into several steps, and then I will show you some examples from my job applications. So the first step is to decide whether you are a good fit for this particular job. Of course, this may sound obvious, because you're probably making that decision in your mind as you're reading the job description for the first time, but here I want to focus specifically on the selection criteria. So you have a list of criteria and you need to decide whether you want to spend time, whether it's worth your time trying to respond to all of them. So the question is, how many selection criteria do you need to meet in order to get the job? So generally it is believed that 80% is the number. So the recruiters' guidelines are that if you meet 80% of job selection criteria, and of course if you responded to them in a proper way, then they will probably invite you for the job interview. From my experience, I think I would personally not bother to apply for a job if you don't meet the vast majority of selection criteria, by which I mean ideally all of them. Maybe if you're missing one, then I would still give it a go, but otherwise I wouldn't even be bothered. And also this depends on whether these are the essential or the desirable selection criteria. I would say that you have to meet all of the essential selection criteria, because just imagine there will be other applicants and other people, and I'm sure there among them there will be people who meet every single of the essential selection criteria. So I would say you have to meet every single essential criteria, and like I said, if you don't meet a few, maybe one or two of the desired criteria, then you could probably still respond to them. So now the second step is to prepare for writing, prepare for responding to these criteria. I think this is a very, very important step. As I said, I've applied for many jobs after my PhD, so I kind of mastered that process, and it became easier and easier for me to produce these responses thanks to this preparation. So the first thing that I always do is copy and paste the list of selection criteria into a separate document. So I want to have all the criteria in front of me. What I do next is I look at each individual criteria one by one, and I delve into my career and educational history and experiences, and I think really hard what are the best examples to provide, what are the examples I'm going to use for individual criteria. So if they are asking, for example, about communication skills or collaborations or networking, I think about all the possible experiences that I have that I can possibly list or highlight in this in the response to this particular criteria. Here it's also very important to be quite creative and open-minded. I will come back to this topic when I show you the actual examples from my applications, and also I've written a blog article on a similar topic, and I'll link to this article in the description. So basically the point is to think about see, I understand that as a student, especially as a student, you probably don't have a very extensive job history. So of course, but this is not a reason to be discouraged, because they probably know that and they understand that. So the whole trick is to kind of utilize the experiences that you do have and try to turn them and present them in a positive light and as something very relevant to this application. So as I will show you later, for example, if they are asking about some kind of organizational skills and people management skills or communication skills, you can think about perhaps some event that you organize. This could be the smallest thing. It could be an event for students, so just something, some kind of a meeting where students exchange their research ideas or their progress on that research. So in the responses to the selection criteria, of course you'll make it look much bigger and much more relevant. So you will confidently talk about your ability to manage people, to organize events. You'll probably call this event a seminar or a workshop. So this obviously will make it sound even better. Then if you're asked about research experience, don't be afraid to use your own master's or your own PhD research. So even if you don't have experience as a researcher, an actual researcher outside of what you're doing at the moment, or even as a research assistant, again, your research experience is also the research experience you are gaining right now when working on your PhD or your master's research. So the whole point again is to really think of anything that is relevant and how you could present it in a positive light and as something relevant to this selection criteria. So this is what you're doing at this second stage when you're still preparing to respond to these criteria. So also another I believe very important piece of advice is that you shouldn't worry about merging and putting together several selection criteria. So I'll explain what I mean, and also you will see when I show you my responses. So what I usually do, I group these selection criteria together, and I think of kind of a smooth way in which I respond to them. So if they are related, I always put them together. So I list several selection criteria together, and then I write a nice response to all of them. So in that process, the final thing that I'm doing when I'm looking at this list and thinking about my experiences, of course I'm making notes. So I'm using the comments function in Microsoft Word, and I'm just brainstorming and just writing some things that come to my mind when it comes to this individual selection criterion. And the next thing I do, I group them together. Like I said, I like to group them together, so I decide which ones will be presented and discussed together. And finally, I'm copying and pasting these separate criteria into a blank document. I use headings, so I will put several under each heading, as I said. So I'll just show you some examples on the screen now. I leave blank spaces. At the moment I don't have anything there, but I leave blank spaces. I decide which criteria will be discussed together. So I'm preparing for writing. And one more important thing that I always do at this stage, and it's very important if you have done this before, if this is not your first time you're responding to selection criteria, or if it is your first time but you're planning obviously to apply for more jobs in the future, what I do at this stage is I go through all my past applications and all my past responses to selection criteria that I have written, and I decide which bits I will manage to use in this application. So again, you can see on the screen now what I mean. So the different colors, they just indicate the bits from different applications, because essentially there is plenty of repetition. I utilize these responses many times. I just slightly adjust them to different positions, but essentially after a month or two of applying for different jobs, you'll have plenty of material. You'll hardly have to write anything new. So at this stage I'm just copying and pasting everything that I have under each section that I decided to have. So under each group of selection criteria, I'm copying and pasting everything that is relevant, and I will probably use for this application. But again, don't worry if this is the first time you're doing this, so obviously you won't have any past applications. Still, it's important to prepare and follow all the steps that I mentioned. So now the next step is actual writing. So here again I will break it down into three main steps. So the first one is to simply understand what they are asking, what a given selection criterion is asking. The second step is to make your claim, and the third step is to provide evidence. So obviously the first step is simply to understand what they want from you. So they use quite common phrases. So let's say demonstrated capacity, demonstrated ability, evidence of something, knowledge of something. You just have to know what they want. If they are asking for demonstrated experience or capacity, they want you to provide examples. You need to demonstrate that in fact you have this knowledge or experience. The second step, like I said, is to make your claim. So always start with claiming, to make a statement about having this particular characteristic or experience. So if they're asking, let's say, for oral and verbal communication skills, the first thing you want to start with is to say, I have developed great or excellent oral and communication skills over the years of, and just continue. Just always state that. And a very important tip at this stage also is to use their own wording. This is very important, because essentially what happens when the recruiter is reading these essential criteria, it resembles the process of marking an exam or marking an assignment. So they have a checklist, and they are checking all these different points they are looking for in your responses. And so it's very important to make it easier for them and to make sure that they understood what you mean, and make sure that they actually register that you have certain experience, is to use the words that they are using. So like I said, if they are asking for excellent oral and written communication skills, you actually want to use that statement and that term somewhere in your response. You want to say exactly the same: I have excellent oral and communication skills. And the third and final step in addressing a specific selection criterion is to support your claim. So as I said, you have to state that you have a certain characteristic or experience, and of course support that statement with something from your experience. And here a generally accepted and followed model of your response is called STAR. This stands for situation, task, action, and result. So basically, in most of your responses, you should follow this model. And again, this is a very important thing to remember. So you should always try to follow this model. So first you describe situation, overall situation that took place. Second, you describe a task or a problem, so something that needed to be done. Ideally, it's a problem. Then you describe action, so what you did and how you did it. This is the actual evidence of you having certain characteristics or skills. And then you describe the result of that action. When I applied for a full-time teaching position at my university, I used this STAR approach to respond to selection criteria. And in this particular example that I want to give you, I was asked about the teaching experience and also being creative and open-minded and flexible as a teacher, as well as generally valuing the student experience. So and several related things, basically to see how good a teacher you are. I did not have much teaching experience, but I had a little bit of practice, of tutoring practice when I was a PhD student. So in my STAR response, the situation was, of course, that I was tutoring when I was a PhD student. The task was something in between a task and a challenge. So I said that because the content of these sessions was difficult, it was about research methods, and I worried that the students may not fully understand something. They may struggle later with their assignments. So I wanted to make sure that they understand. I wanted to make sure that my instruction is in fact effective and is helping them. So that was the task. The action was that I decided that after each session I would ask them to provide anonymous feedback on what they wanted me to do in a different way or wanted me to explain a little bit better. So that was the action. So I took this step and I asked them to provide this feedback. And the result was that I was nominated for a teaching award at the university. So here you have a clear explanation of the situation, task, action, what you did, and the result, what the result was. Of course, it's not always so easy to distinguish between these different elements, and most importantly, you don't have to talk about them as in the model. So I'm not sure if I made this clear, but you never want to actually mention these task and situation and action, but it should be evident in your writing. And quite often it's not possible to distinguish between these different elements, but generally try to provide evidence of some kind of a result or impact. So that's the main point, I would say. So if you don't have much publishing or writing experience, you may still say, if it's about if this criterion is about writing skills, you can say that the task kind of was writing your dissertation. The action was that it was so well written that the result was that you were advised to try to publish your dissertation. So here you are, and again you have this STAR model. Okay, so now I want to show you the actual examples. Like I said, they are examples from my job applications. All these applications were successful, so they led to job interviews. So I will provide a few more examples. I'll break this whole process down, and I will relate to how to follow this model and generally explain what I did. Okay, so now you can see my actual application for this was one of my early applications for a job, so I did not have much experience. So basically I want to go through what we have here and just make some comments regarding some of my responses. So the first one is a PhD in social science topic. So this was after my PhD. I already graduated, and here you don't really, there is not much room for creativity. They just want to know if you have this PhD. But again, this is not to say that you just want to say in one sentence, yes, I do have a PhD. So I took this opportunity, this space to talk a little bit about my study, to talk about the fact that it prepared me to conduct research of the highest quality and different contexts. So I mentioned the context relevant to this particular job. What else did I say? I kind of led into the topic of my actual study, which I come back to later, as you'll see. So I said what the aim of the project was, and I also mentioned a follow-up. So after my PhD, I followed. I had this idea of a follow-up study where I involved several academics. Again, I later come back to this topic in one of my further responses. But basically, I didn't want to leave this blank, so I kind of used this opportunity to highlight a couple of my skills. And now, as you can see, this second section, I have used so many different criteria. This is what I said before in this video. So the essential criteria was qualitative and or quantitative methods, but then desirable criteria, a whole lot of these. So experience in mixed methods research, experience organizing workshops, research experience in topics related to the project theme. This one is probably one that may stand out when you look at it now, because this is all about research skills, and I decided to also talk about experience of organizing academic workshops. I will show you in a second why this is the case, and maybe this will make it easier for you to understand how I merge these different responses and why I do it. So firstly, of course, in terms of all the research experiences, as you can see, I talk about my PhD and my master's study. I didn't have much experience outside of that, so of course I had to focus on what I had. So I talk about my theoretical knowledge and how I implemented it in practice, how I employed a vast array of methods and approaches. So everything, I want to highlight everything that is relevant. I have, all these different skills. So here I describe, this is about mixed methods, because here I describe my MSc TESOL study where I had quantitative and qualitative methods. So I'm talking about it, I'm talking about designing the tools, I'm talking about my PhD where I flexibly adopted a grounded theory approach. So again, they never asked about this, but I decided, I want to tell them that I'm creative, I can think critically, I can flexibly adopt something. So here I highlighted that I had this new kind of so to speak method, because I combined several different methods. So I'm just using, I'm doing everything I can to show them that I know a lot about research. Somewhere I mentioned validity, so I talk about validity of my findings. And here, as I said, you may be wondering what is experience of academic workshops doing here. So basically, the way this response leads to this response is that my skills in conducting research have been recognized by members of staff at the University of Edinburgh. And then I say that they provided me with opportunities to conduct lectures and lead workshops. So this is why and how it leads. It was kind of a natural transition. So I decided in this case it makes sense. It may still not make much sense to you, but if you look at all your responses, this is the result of me looking at all the selection criteria and deciding what fits where. So at some point I decided this will be a nice transition. This is where I want to talk about this. Several important things that I want you to look at in this part of the response, so where I talk about me organizing several internal events. So they were aimed at enabling the MSc TESOL students to maximize the value of their education. Again, this is, it sounds ambitious, but you have to be like that. You have to, like I said, utilize every single experience that you have and try to make it sound even more important. So I talked about this, organizing these mini conferences or seminars. And to be honest with you, it was very easy. If you're still a student, just try doing that. I literally just had to put a few students together once a month, and somebody would talk about their research. That's what it was. It had this official name, and I would send out emails. But it helped me so much in my subsequent applications, job applications. I didn't know at the time. It was a very small and simple event, but it really helped. And the way I presented in my applications, it really helped me a lot. So, and here you have another important point. You have the result that I talked about. So remember the star format. So the situation, task, action, and result. So here I said these seminars have proved to be very popular, and some research collaborations formed as the result. Eventually developed into full-scale research projects. And I was asked by staff members to train my successors to lead this research network. This is the result. So this is not just something that the recruiter has no idea about whether it was successful or not. I clearly said what the result of this was. So here now let's have a look at the third section. Again, a mix of essential and desirable criteria. Here it obviously makes sense. The essential criteria were excellent IT skills, and desirable were ability to use data analysis software. So I put them together. In this case is just common sense. So again, I talked about using this software. Again, I talk about my research. This time the focus is slightly more on the software that I used. So it's not so much about the methods that I use as in the previous response. And as you can see, I'm following that STAR model again, because here I say similar thing to what I said before. When working on my PhD research, my skills and data analysis were recognized by one of my supervisors, who later employed me as a research assistant, and I was recommended to another scholar, which resulted in me collaborating with him on several projects. So this is the result. Again, this is the result of me using that software. So we are following that model. And finally, another mini STAR response, and this response is when I talk about one of the research assistant roles. So this was actually, I couldn't remember, so at some point when I had worked as a research assistant, this was for my supervisor. So it was not that hard to get that job, but it was again extremely helpful for my future applications. So again, I talked about what I analyzed with NVivo. And here I said as a result, so it's so clear that this is a result. I was asked to write a discussion of the results. So I was basically working on the data that my supervisor had gathered, and then as a result, I described these results, and the quality was so good that I was asked to write a discussion of these results, and it was offered opportunity to be listed as a co-author. So again, I'm not only referring a little bit to my future responses, to my publication experiences, I'm showing how good my skills are, because as a result, I produced such a good report that I was asked to co-author this publication. So I'm just trying to show you some good examples of what I did and how to respond to selection criteria. Let's now look at another example. Number 4, so excellent oral and written communication skills and willingness to engage with different stakeholders. So this is what I merged this with. So basically I said my outstanding oral communication skills have been developed through a number of recognized scientific conferences. Always good to go to conferences. Another lesson for you if you're still a student. And my writing skills are evidence in the developing publication base. So then I talked about myself being an effective communicator and developing rapport, and I explained how I initiated that project with 2 scholars, because this is what I did. I went to a conference and I basically just talked to this person whose work I admired and enjoyed, and I suggested that we kind of do an extension of that project in my context. Again, helped me. We did that project. It didn't really work out that well, but I've been using that example in all my job applications. So So this is how it really helped me. And here sometimes the criteria are a little bit more tricky. So here, excellent interpersonal and team member skills with the ability to relate successfully to colleagues and those external to the university. So as you can see, sometimes you're looking at these and just wondering what they want from me. So basically what I did here, again, I thought about my interpersonal and team member skills, which was kind of hard, and relating successfully to colleagues. And I gave an example of that follow-up study that I mentioned. So basically I talked to my supervisors, that's what it was. I explained to them what I wanted to do as a follow-up to my study. And we just discussed this several times. We had these discussions. It was very informal. We were just meeting, I was just meeting my supervisors and we were talking about this idea of mine. Basically that's what it was. But look at this. When preparing a detailed plan of the aforementioned follow-up project to my PhD study and constructing the research funding bid with the research partners, my research partners were my supervisors. I recruited among the staff at the University of Edinburgh. They were my supervisors and I think one more person. We cooperated with each other closely and held weekly meetings, brainstormed ideas. Here I talk about my research partners being more experienced than me, but nevertheless I was keen to know their thoughts and listen to their suggestions, and I was happy to make some fundamental changes to my project whenever such a need emerged from our discussion. So I'm talking about being critical about myself, seeing my own limitations, listening to others. So as you can see, this was a weird selection criterion, and at that point I didn't know what to say. I would perhaps now have more to say, but this is just to show you that sometimes you're literally taking small things and from your experience and, as I said, just try to blow them up and just make them sound so much better. And I said before about trying not to have these short answers. As you can see, willingness to travel across Scotland and driving license. I mean, what can you say about that? I remember I consulted as a specialist in this career development, and he told me that it's okay, in this case it's okay just to state that. I mean, no reason to be creative when you're responding to such simple selection criterion. So sometimes it does happen. And now I'll just very quickly storm through another application just to see if there is anything interesting. I just want to give you as many examples as possible, and also you'll see that there are so many things that are these two have in common. This one was actually for a teaching position, so that the other one was for research, this one was for teaching, and still you'll see that I'm using literally the same sentences. So I've been involved with several studies related to the topic of education. This one was about teaching at a research course, so it was about teaching, but also about having these research skills. So evidence of participation in higher level study. So here I used the exact same example that in the previous one I used for talking about appealing to different stakeholders and colleagues outside and inside the university or something. So here I'm talking about the same scholars that I approached at the conference, because this was like a high level study. It was an international study, and this is how I describe it here. So I talk about, you know, Greece and other countries. So it just makes it sound so much better when I do so. And it's exactly the same example that I used before, and just when addressing a different selection criteria. And here you can see, even when this one was a tough one, it was a difficult application because I hardly had any experience. This was literally one of the first few applications, but you can see some similarities. So here I'm expected to talk about experience in research and evaluation and ability to work effectively under limited supervision. So I'm talking about research in terms of my PhD and master's study. So here again I'm just kind of killing time by talking about extensively utilizing my theoretical knowledge, which, you know, the truth was I had no experience to talk about, so I'm just talking about the things that are still somehow relevant to some extent. And here, as you can see, I'm saying the same thing that I said in the other application. My skills have been recognized, and you know, by staff members at the university. So it's always about the result, the STAR model. There is nothing else in this particular application, because here again I'm talking about my data analysis skills and the software skills. I'm talking about effective oral and written communication skills, and I'm using the exact same sentences as in the other application, but to argue different points. And here the final one that I want to share, so demonstrated ability to work as a member of a team. So this is exactly the same as in the previous application. In that application the wording was different and I struggled a little bit, but it's about working as in a team, in a cooperative manner. So I'm talking about this follow-up study and how we worked with my supervisor. So again, about how I organized this internal research team. That's what I called it. It's a nice name for a student and his two supervisors. And I'm talking about the same meetings again, and taking their feedback and criticism on board, basically. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share. Just let me know if you want to see some more examples. Okay, so this is what I wanted to talk in terms of responding to selection criteria. I hope that you learned something new. If you did, please like this video. If you feel that I missed something, if you want me to explain something in more detail, don't hesitate to comment under the video. And also remember that through my website I provide a range of tutorials and one-to-one sessions. So if you feel like you need some support with your career or maybe your job application, don't hesitate to reach out.